I'm interested you take me back, and actually I'd like to take you even further back now, because I think in the evolution of any boxer, there has to be a moment, maybe when you're a kid, because I know you started when you were very young, at 10 years old, there has to be a moment when you realise that you can deal with being hurt and dishing out hurt to your opponent. When did you realise that you could easily live with that, you could cope with that?
Oh, there's probably a fight earlier on in my career when I wasn't in the best of shape. I fought a guy called Haye who's a good amateur and a good professional. And I went to train that day. I came down there to fight. I wasn't even sure if I was actually fighting on that night, but I did actually fought the guy, and we had a really tough fight. It was a real tough fight. It was a 3-round fight. I won the first round. He won the second round. It was going into the third round, and it was a real slug. Blood and guts sort of affair, and I managed to knock him out unconscious for about 5-10 minutes. He was completely out, and I think that was the fight where I thought, okay, then, you know, no matter what happens, I took some stick in that fight. I was completely knackered. I managed to get him out of there, get him out of there. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this is definitely for me. I think I was just about 17 at the time. But
I'm very interested in that story because I want to talk to you about fear. And before I talk about fear that you might get hurt, I just wonder whether when that guy was on the canvas, flat out, and you say it was 5 or 10 minutes, unconscious, were you really fearful of what you'd done to him?
Not at the time, you know, not at the time. When I was in the ring, all you're trying to do is just get the guy out of there, win by any means. It was only after about 5 minutes on the floor, and then I sort of, when I'm fighting, I don't see anything else. I just see my opponent. I don't see the crowd. I don't see the ropes. I just see my opponent. And it's only until sort of the mist settles, and I'm sort of, okay, the guy's unconscious. I won the fight, and I start looking around. I could see his mum next to him, sort of really crying because she's seen her son. She doesn't know what the hell's wrong with him. Looking down at him. And I'm thinking, oh, you know, I hope he's all right. And then he gets up, and I went and said, how you feeling? And he was just a bit groggy. But, you know, I remember thinking, okay, I'm happy that he's all right. But when you're fighting, you're not worrying about yourself, you're not worrying about your opponent, you're just worrying about winning. You have to win the fight. By any means, you have to find a way. You're always going to think, okay, I'm getting hit by that. Let's not start doing things differently.
I can, obviously, I've never done it, but I can imagine that. But I can't necessarily imagine how you, having been through the experience you've just described, how you get yourself mentally up for the next fight, because there's always a next fight. And when you have seen a guy unconscious, and as you just said, you didn't know for those 5 or 10 minutes whether he was going to emerge from this badly damaged, possibly taken to hospital, possibly with long-term brain damage. You couldn't have known that. And yet, a few weeks down the line, a few months down the line,
you fight again.
You have to do it all over.
I think it's like any other sport. If it was like a rugby player tackling someone, I'm sure rugby players have broke people's necks or broke people's back by tackling them hard in a scrum. You don't then go in half-heartedly the next time. It's just part and parcel.
But it's different, though, isn't it? Because in boxing, that is the whole point of boxing. You go in there to
injure him, is to get him on the floor for 10 seconds or win on points. It's not to actually give the guy brain damage. You know, giving the guy brain. Sometimes people finish the fight with brain damage. You don't.
But you go in to hit him in the head. You go in to bash him on the head.
Just like a rugby player goes in to tackle someone, put him down hard, or an American football player jumps in with their head and their heads collide. More people get injured and killed playing rugby and NFL than they do in boxing.
I just wonder, you know, and again, I'm just trying to tease out the psychology of it. I heard a very powerful interview recently with a boxer called Richie Winton, who a few years ago fought a ferocious fight with a young man, a bantamweight called Bradley Stone, who ended up dying a couple of days later. And Richie Winton says, when that has happened to you, you have to live with it for the rest of your life. You basically, as a boxer, killed a man. Of course, within the rules of the game, and you knew what the game was, but you killed a man. Have you ever thought how you would cope with that?
No, I'd never focus on that one bit. Because by focusing on the potential harm you could do to someone, potentially killing someone, that would only soften you as a fighter, because you might not put the final touches onto a knockout. You might not hit him when the referee's already said break, or it might soften you anyway. And one thing about boxing, you have to be as ruthless as possible if you want to be the most effective fighter you can be. You can't have that soft side, that worrying side, that caring side. You have to push that to one side.
How do you do that? How do you cut off your compassion? I'm guessing you know, you're a human being. You have got compassion within you.
It's something I've been competing doing boxing since the age of 10. So it's something that's sort of developed inside of me. I don't think everybody's designed for that. I think maybe one in 1,000 people have got that sort of that killer fighter, you know, animal instinct in them. It's not something that a regular guy will have. If there is, he'd probably end up in prison for some reason. So it's something that's sort of slowly but surely sort of nurtured, sounds crazy, I know, nurtured into your psyche, into your mindset. So when you go out there, you don't think about anything else other than putting that guy on his back.
It sounds a bit to me like things I've heard soldiers say to me about training new recruits. You have to train them into a mindset. I mean, you know, with quotation marks around it, used that word killer. I mean, you have to be so hard. I just wonder whether, you know, we talk about damage. You're David Haye now, going on to live a life. You may or may not, given the earlier conversation we had, be boxing again. But if you're not, how are you going to switch from being the David Haye who has that utterly hard, dispassionate, ruthless streak to being David Haye who lives in a society where that's not acceptable?
It's not acceptable one little bit, is it? And that's what a lot of boxers have struggled with that over the years, you know, trying to go from being a killer fighter to just a regular guy. And I think it's something I'll be able to cope with. I think I'm quite level-headed, and that killer mode that I go into is switched on when I walk into the ring. I don't have it in sparring, I don't have it in the gym, I only have it when I literally get into that ring. And people say ringside, you know, close family members say they don't recognise me when I'm in the ring. As soon as I step through the ropes and I switch on to fight mode, people say they look into my eyes go black, and they just don't recognise me. They do not recognise the person fighting. And as long as that person stays well hidden away, when the boxing gloves come off, it's a good thing for the nation.
Well, you laugh, but I'm just wondering whether you can switch it on and off, because you know, you have given me perhaps the strongest hint so far that you may well be climbing back in the ring with Vitaly Klitschko in maybe March, maybe April of next year, which means that the relaxed, cool David Haye that sits here is going to have to press that switch one more time. Can you do it like that? Just, you know, walk away and then walk back in?
I've done it for as long as I can remember. Before that, I did martial arts. Before I was 10, I did martial arts. So I've always been into combat sports and been in combat mode. When most kids are watching Tom and Jerry, I was watching Jackie Chan movies and Bruce Lee. I've always loved fighting. It's been a sort of a way of life for me. So I think it would be more strange just to go into everyday life than switching the fight mode back on.
You talk about martial arts there. I want to bring that in because I want to talk about the state of boxing and the other sports, the other contact sports, which may be overtaking boxing. There are many people, experts on boxing, who say that right now the heavyweight division in particular is at a disastrously low ebb, that it is frankly losing the interest of TV viewers around the world, particularly in America. It's a dying sport.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. You know, the last few years, since I'd say Lennox Lewis retired, and since I've moved into the heavyweight division, there hasn't really been that much excitement. You know, there's been a lot of heavyweights who hold title belts. Obviously, the Klitschko brothers, who seem to, I don't know, they seem to pick and choose. They're sort of washed up Americans. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's the fact that America isn't producing the same type of Holyfields, the Riddick Bowes,
well,
as the Mike Tysons as they were.
Just a few weeks since Joe Frazier died. I mean, you think about that generation, Frazier, Ali,
Norton,
George Foreman, Norton, all of them. It's not happening anymore.
It's
well,
not.
Why is that?
I believe it's the money side of things. There's not enough money involved in big-time boxing.
It's not enough money.
There's not enough money.
How much have you made?
Plenty, but...
What, more than 10 million? Pounds, that is. So you've made $20–30 million.
I'm talking about Americans coming through.
No,
I've done it by promoting myself. You know, these American guys, they can't do that for whatever reason. You know, the guys who would be world champion are probably doing NFL or playing NBA. All the big guys, all the big, powerful, explosive
football
guys.
Or basketball? Professional football,
professional basketball. Because they could sit on the bench and earn 10 million every 6 months or so. So why are they going to be fighting for the heavyweight title? Look at Shannon Briggs. He was a former heavyweight champion. He fought with Vitaly Klitschko, and he allegedly walked away with $25,000. So you think, is it really worth putting your body through it? And he ended up in a coma with a torn bicep, ruptured eye socket. He ended up in a bad way for $25,000. Is that really worth it for someone, or can they go and play basketball?
But you know what? There are people in boxing. Clinton McKenzie's one, a commentator now, used to be a top boxer himself, who say that you're part of the problem because you've been involved in high-profile, much hyped fights, and you've done a lot of the hype yourself. With, for example, Audley Harrison, and then with Vladimir Klitschko, which in Clinton McKenzie's view have been disastrous for boxing. In his words, they're producing a meltdown in the sport because they're so poor. The fights are so poor.
The fight with Audley Harrison was a fight that the public demanded it. The public demanded. They wanted to set up. I said from this day one, I don't want to fight Woody Harrison. I said, as I said, it's going to be very one-sided.
It brought the sport into disrepute.
I said I don't say it brought the sport into disrepute. It was something I said I didn't want to fight him, but the television network wanted that fight. The viewing public wanted that fight because it was one of the most highest. It was, I think, the most highest viewed all British heavyweight title fights.
And led to immense disillusion. The point I'm getting to is that right now you look around the world at the fighters in the game and you do not see the sorts of fights that make people pay per view to switch on their TVs and watch. And that's why the sport is in disarray.
People are still paying for it though. People still, but after the Woody Harrison fight, people paid for the Vitaly Klitschko fight. Also, the Vladimir Klitschko fight. People want to see it. People want to see big guys.
But if you look at the figures, well, you say that, but if you look at the figures, what they're really paying for, particularly in the United States, is the mixed martial arts now, and the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
The UFC, the mixed martial arts tournaments.
That's right. And that is replacing boxing as the spectator sport for those who like fighting.
I don't think it's replacing boxing. I think it's another sport. I'm a mixed martial arts fan myself. I love the UFC. I think it's a great organisation. I think this, if you want to see a great night of fighting, then tune in and watch that.
Might you do that?
I do that, yeah. I subscribe to ESPN.
No, but I mean, might you actually get into that ring?
No, I wouldn't. Personally, I wouldn't. Not at this stage. I think I'd get way too many injuries. I'm quite injury prone as it is just in boxing, let alone someone choking me out or elbowing me in the face. I think it would be a little too much for me.
A final thought. You're too young to have to think about this right now, but one day you may have a son who wants to be a boxer. After everything we've discussed in this interview, would you encourage or even allow your son, if you had a say in it, to be a boxer?
Only if he was more naturally gifted than myself. If he was any less physically gifted in terms of speed, athleticism, movement, timing, then I'd say no, because boxing, if you're not better than 99 people out of 100, you're going to get punched in the face repeatedly a lot, and you will get injured and hurt, and I'd hate for my son to get hurt. So unless you're, I haven't had any big injuries, and I'd hate for my son to get any.
We have to end there, but David Haye, thanks for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you very much indeed.